Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Mental Health, Reducing Stress at Work. I am Walter Reich, excuse me. I am Walter Reichman, a partner and vice president at OrgVitality, and emeritus professor of psychology at Baruch College and the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. If we were working and living in normal times, I would focus the webinar on those conditions at work which cause stress. I have some of them listed on the slide. There are poor health and safety conditions at the workplace, the practices of management, having inflexible working hours, having tasks that are unclear to you, having an unrelenting, overpowering workload, the design of the work itself, the relationships that you have with your coworkers, the concerns you have for your careers, and having tasks that are not suited to your capabilities or to your competencies. But these are not normal times. And while all of these stressors are still operative, we have additional and more immediate stresses that impact our ability to work productively, to live productively, and to live satisfying lives. But I want to emphasize at all times that work is good for mental health, but negative work environments, such as the conditions we are now living under, put stress on mental health. The additional stress is due to the current pandemic. For our purposes, let's define stress as experiencing intense discomfort because we perceive our current situation as more than we can comfortably handle and in ways that we are not used to dealing with issues that we face both at work and at home. The stress that we are experiencing now began moderately as we heard about the virus in China and became slowly more intensified as it moved to Europe, and then to the United States, and then to our state, and then to our city, and then to our town, and now to our immediate working lives and home lives. We are now mostly working from home, with spouse and children doing the same. This is not how we normally work or live. In addition, there is the fear for our own health and the health of our families and loved ones. There is also the concern for those who have come down with the disease and grieving for those who have died from it. The discomfort we feel, we are labeling stress. It has its roots in the flight, fight, freeze situation that you learned in Bio 1 and Psychology 1001, and which Jeff alluded to in the previous session. When our minds sense danger, our bodies change to prepare us to flee from the danger or to fight the danger. These bodily changes cause uncomfortable and detrimental physical changes, and then call into being hormones that affect our brain's activities with regard to both thinking and emotions. The net results are the feelings we are labeling as stress. They can range from mild to a level where they are inhibiting our daily functioning. In our culture, being productive workers with jobs, occupations, titles, and professions define us. What do you do is still among the earliest questions you ask a new acquaintance, and then make judgments based on their answers. And we know that we are often evaluated to the answer we give to that question. We are unfortunately in a time when the unemployment rate and furlough rate is at the highest level it has ever been. And as I said before, work is good for mental health. We are not having a good deal of work. Despite this reality, I am suggesting that we can cope with stress, find ways to be productive, and if we are in a situation of unemployment, we can still continue to be creative, productive people in ways that will ultimately promote our careers in the future. Let's look at ways of coping with the stress. And let's start with the less effective coping strategies that can be temporarily effective and then bring about problems that can hinder or destroy our lives. I'm talking about addiction. A drink can reduce one's stress temporarily, but if you continue to drink, it requires more and more. And then after a while, you're drinking at a high level just in order to quell the stress that you had before. And if you continue to drink, it begins to cause its own problems and induces more stress in yourself and then in those around you. The same is true for drugs, for smoking, for eating, and even for exercise if it carries to an excess. In my own case, when I was much younger, I met any type of stress with a cigarette. The greater the stress, the more cigarettes I smoked. In my old age, nothing calms me like chocolate ice cream, except maybe a chocolate bar. When I now venture into a grocery store, I go right to the snack shelves, and I feel better just knowing I can get a chocolate bar, I can eat it, and unfortunately, I do eat it too often. I now set a quota of not more than 5 pounds resulting from this isolation period. But seriously, if you do tend to deal with your stress by eating, there is a probability that in these high stress times, you will overeat and gain too much weight. And we now know there is a relationship between obesity and coming down with the virus. If someone tells you you're eating too much, or drinking too much, or doing too much of anything, take them seriously. Don't deny it, and look into possible more productive ways of reducing your stress. We also must be concerned about our emotions getting out of hand at these times. We are operating at a time and in an environment in which we will be prevented from achieving many of our goals, both short-term goals and long-term goals. Our desire is to remove the things that are blocking us from reaching our desired goals. And currently, the blockage is the result of the unseen, unpredictable virus. The emotion that we have from not being able to remove this goal, we're labeling frustration. And this frustration often leads to anger and striking out in irrational ways. So, for example, you're in your home and you're working and you can't accomplish a piece of work because of the current conditions. And then your spouse asks you to do something you don't want to do, which then exacerbates your frustration, and you find yourself lashing out against your spouse with an angry and hurtful response. Your frustration is momentarily relieved, but the long-term consequences may be worse for you and for your family. In New York City, we already have seen an increase in reports of domestic violence. In the work situation, there are a number of people you can lash out against. You can lash out against your boss, your associates, your peers, but most often the tendency is to lash out against someone who reports to you and who's dependent on you. However, if you should lose it, if you should lose control, don't hesitate to apologize and express your stress and then work out a process of resolving your concern with the person who you lashed out against in a productive manner for the future. If someone lashes out at you, respond calmly and suggest a calmer and more productive way of resolving issues between you. It is also possible to make yourself the target of aggression by engaging in self-defeating and self-destructive behavior. At its ultimate extreme, the notion of suicide. It is necessary to take feelings and threats by others of suicide seriously and seek immediate help. This may be a good place to show you places where you can obtain help when you believe you're experiencing more stress than you can handle, when you find that you're drinking too much, taking drugs, or having thoughts of suicide, or know someone who has such thoughts. If you don't get all these numbers down, don't worry. We will send you the slides at the end of the project and you'll have it for you. Now let's take a look at what you can do that is positive to reduce stress. I am calling the process cognitive restructuring. This is a process of using our minds to supersede our emotions and to change our emotions. The first thing to do in cognitive restructuring is to come to terms with your stress. Recognize it for what it is. Don't repress your feelings. Don't deny your feelings. And don't be ashamed of them. The feelings are there and they are yours. The feelings will not harm you. It is what you do with them that has consequences for you. If the feelings are really intense, my suggestion is to just sit with them. Let them wash over you. Feel them, and you'll find that they gradually will diminish. And as they diminish, they will begin to free you. And once they free you, you can begin to engage in productive thinking. And now, what do we mean by productive thinking? Stress is often generated internally by the way we interpret a situation and the negative thoughts that result from our own interpretation. Our inner negative talk can often generate a good deal of stress. Without being a Pollyanna about this process, I'm asking, is it possible to use your mind to recognize what is causing the stress and determine which elements of the stressful stimuli you can manage intellectually? Can you find some positive element in the situation that can be interpreted differently so that you can see another side of it, perhaps a more positive side? Is there something from your current situation that gives you some pleasure? Perhaps having your children nearby, the concern of neighbors or friends or relatives for you, your positive feelings about helping someone else, or the gratitude you receive from calling someone to find out how they are doing. Is there something that you have learned from this experience that will direct your behavior in a more productive direction? Is there something from this experience that will inform you on how to do things better, more effectively, more efficiently as you move into the future? Is there something from this experience that you will bring to your life after this crisis is past, so it will make your future better for you? If none of this is possible, or if it only partially works, My suggestion is segregate yourself from the stress-provoking events and don't think of it now. Tell yourself, I'll put it aside and dwell on it for no longer than 15 or 20 minutes at a later time. In the meantime, I have other things to do. And later, when you're dealing with the stress, do not dwell on it for more than the allotted time. Then put it aside and begin to brainstorm about how to make the necessary changes in your life, in your environment, in order to reduce the stress. If this process does not work the first time, try it again and again, and eventually it will work out for you. The next important element is communication. Communicating with others is a major way of reducing and even preventing stress. It is particularly important in the workplace. Communication provides information as well as providing human contact, both so essential for human productive functioning. I would have liked to see organizations provide an information command center and a chief communicator who would be responsible for providing information and respond to concerns that employees have. Providing truthful information builds trust, and trust is essential for stress reduction. The chief communicator can become the anchor for obtaining information that can be used in reassessing options and in making decisions for the organization as a whole. If you were a manager, you might arrange a communication system so that you are in contact with your direct reports. You can be the source of information. However, when appropriate, you should admit that you lack the information and indicate a willingness to seek answers to questions that they ask and to provide the answers as soon as you can. In the same way, whatever your position, you should maintain contact with the person who you report to. Also, maintain contact with coworkers, especially those with whom you have a personal as well as a business relationship. Having a confidant to talk to is also a way of reducing stress. It would also be a very good idea to set up a social communication network among the people you work with and who report to you. You should make it a pleasurable meeting on Zoom or GoToMeeting in which the people will introduce their significant others, their children, their pets. The building of a social community at work will reduce stress and promote their work behavior. It will also be a way of keeping contact with the health and the emotions of the people who depend on you and on whom you depend. One of the results of this pandemic is the increase in the number of people who are experiencing loneliness, due in part to the enforced isolation, as well as to other life disruptions. Loneliness can lead to depression, and that increases stress and decreases the ability to work productively. Continuous communication will also make it easier for you and for them to share information on other difficult issues which are inevitable in a pandemic. It is inevitable that people will be in quarantine. It is inevitable that people will become ill and that people will die or be touched by death. Because of supportive communication, it will be easier to confide such information with the expectation of receiving support and consolation. It will also provide important information to the manager, who still must manage the production needs of the organization. Let's take a look now at management style. If you are managing others, You have a responsibility for their production and therefore for taking action to reduce their stress. You can accomplish this by considering their position during this time and being open to their concerns and empathic to their needs. Let them know that they are important to you and encourage them to confide in you. Be open to them about your business and personal concerns and indicate that, like them, you are experiencing stress and working to deal with it in a productive manner. When there is bad news, share it with them as you would with positive news. Plan for the probability that people who report to you are likely to become sick or have to deal with sick family members or experience grief and mourning. Despite this, you still must keep production moving. Plan to have people do multiple tasks so they can fill in when someone is absent. Present this as a way of helping your fellow employee rather than as a means of keeping the production numbers high. Given the current pandemic, consider changing your productivity expectations. Don't initiate new policies and procedures that are unrelated to the current situation, and be sure that anything you initiate improves the lives of your employees rather than worsening them. Apply your policies consistently and fairly to all, and not discriminate against your employees or among any of your employees. Let's take a look at scheduling. Try setting a work and non-work schedule for yourself. Set aside a period of time each day to devote to your work and a quiet place where you can work uninterrupted. Prioritize the work you have to do. Break it down into small steps. Also, recognize the limitations under which you are working and don't try to control the uncontrollable. If you can share tasks and delegate tasks, do so. Balance your schedule with social contacts and definitely put aside time for family and especially for children if you have them. Build flexibility into your schedule. If it goes askew, don't despair or give up. Form another schedule and do it until you find one that works effectively for you. Let's now take a look at some personal stress reduction. There are many suggestions for each of us as to how to reduce our personal stress, which, of course, if we reduce our personal stress, it will help us work better and work more productively. The three most popular are exercise, meditation, and deep breathing. And I will add another one, the fourth one, I will add personal expression. Dealing with exercise, the Mayo Clinic states that virtually any form of exercise, from aerobics to yoga, can act as a stress reliever. Exercise pumps up your endorphins, which they describe as feel-good neurotransmitters. The clinic describes exercise as meditation in motion. Meditation itself is a stress reducer. If you've done it before, it is worth doing it again, and it might be a new activity to learn as a break from work. Deep breathing also stimulates the relaxation response in one's body. It brings more oxygen to the lungs and cells, and ultimately to the brain, than does the type of shallow breathing that we're used to. There are many deep breathing exercises described on the internet, and you can select what is most comfortable for you. And my fourth one, express your unique self. Express yourself in ways that reduce stress and give you pleasure. Here are some of the things that I've heard from people in terms of expressing themselves. I know people who keep a journal in which they express their highs and lows, comforts, discomforts, fears, anxieties, and pleasures. Write a letter to someone. That's something I'm doing. I'm writing a letter to my grandson who has not yet learned to read. And I'm describing what I'm feeling and what's going on in this historical time that will be part of his history as he grows older and learns to read and goes to school. I know someone who is writing poetry. I know someone who is painting. I know someone who is doing ceramics. I know someone who is writing new lyrics to old songs. You can find your own niche for creativity and expression to release the stress and to help you function better as you work from home. The next slide, here are some references that you might look through on the internet to find some kinds of ways of dealing with your own personal stress reliever. Again, if you don't get it here, you will get the slide later on. I also find it comforting and stress reducing to read what others have said or written about handling difficult times and difficult situations. Here are some of my favorites. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. That was said by Franklin Roosevelt at his inauguration at the height of the Great Depression. Do what you can with what you got, where you are. This was said by Franklin Roosevelt's cousin Theodore Roosevelt when he was president of the United States and the United States was facing a particularly difficult time. My anxiety doesn't come from thinking about the future, but from wanting to control it. Nothing is worth your health. Nothing is worth poisoning yourself into stress, anxiety, and fear. No amount of anxiety can control the future. You don't have to control your thoughts. You just have to let them stop controlling you. And finally on this list, trust yourself. You have survived a bit, and you'll survive this too. My favorite stress reducer is a biblical story of King Solomon that my father told me when I was having a particular difficult time as an adolescent in high school. And the story went as follows. King Solomon, one of the wisest men in the universe, was concerned about the ups and downs in his life. When things went well for him, he was elated and happy. When things did not go as he wanted, he would fall into deep despair. He became tired at these ups and downs in his life and wanted to find some kind of a balancing middle course. He summoned his jeweler and instructed him to design a ring so that when he looked at it when he was joyous, it would remind him of times in his life when things were bad. And when he looked at it in his sorrow, he would remember the joyous times. It was probably the wisdom of the jeweler that caused him to design a ring with the engraving, "This too shall pass." Let's learn from this wise jeweler as we progress through these times, work to reduce our stress, and continue to be productive people. I thank you for listening. And if you would like to ask me a question or have anything that I can do to help you or your organization, please contact me. Send me an email at walter.reichman@orgvitality.com, and I will be delighted to respond to you. I just want to finish with 2 more slides relevant to OrgVitality. I want to call your attention to OrgVitality's free pulse survey on employee well-being and business resilience. This free survey is available to for-profit and not-for-profit organizations. It's been going for a past week or so and extraordinarily successful. You can check out our website or email me for more information. And a final word about OrgVitality. OrgVitality provides models for connecting employees and their organizations. We do terrific work. We'd be happy to work with you and talk to you at any time. Thank you so much for being a part of this webinar. Please connect with other sessions that we're presenting both today and tomorrow. I hope the rest of your day is good, productive, and healthy. Thank you very much.